They call it a hum, a sound too low to be heard, too steady to be natural. In the Nevada desert, where the wind already seems to sing, something else was singing back. It wasn't wind, it wasn't traffic, it was a vibration that bent the air and made the bones of machines tremble. This is the story of Dr. Eleanor Raines, a seismologist who chased a phantom on her instruments and found a secret that the Cold War had buried so deep, the desert itself seemed to swallow it. What she recorded under the mesa would change how a field technician thinks about sound forever. Ellie was 32 when she signed the contract with a regional research consortium. She'd mapped aftershocks and perched seismometers on volcano flanks. She trusted numbers the way most people trust daylight. When the USGS alerted her to a cluster of tiny rhythmic tremors in an otherwise quiet region near an old test range, she thought it was another curious anomaly, something explainable. But data has its own stubbornness. These tremors arrived like clockwork, low, long pulses that registered across 3 separate arrays, leaving no surface deformation, no displaced dust, no ruptured rock. Animals in the nearby ranches fled at night. Metal hungers, the kind of slow fatigue engineers call resonant wear, appeared in abandoned outposts. Local ranchers whispered about a nightly breathing underfoot. Ellie set up camp, calibrated her sensors, and listened. On her first full night in the field, she recorded the hum. She called it a hum because that was the closest word humans had for the deep, sustained pressure that traveled like a slow trumpet under the world. Her seismometers translated it into a line on a screen, a clean, repeating waveform, not like an earthquake, not like machinery, but alive with structure. Curiosity pulled her into the archives. Old files, stamped, brittle, nearly illegible, described a top-secret program, Project HOLLOWTONE. Initiated in the late 1950s, HOLLOWTONE was logged as an effort to study subsonic propagation and counter infrasound signatures for defensive measures. Whatever they did it underground. Damped chambers, resonance arrays, experiments labeled non-kinetic deterrence. The more she read, the colder it got. Footnotes spoke of equipment losses, of personnel reassigned for medical reasons, of a schematic that showed a cavernous room carved into bedrock and lined with transducers. The program ended abruptly. The records stopped. There were no published results. They had cut the project from history. Ellie found the entrance not by searching the map. The mesa had been artificially flattened, a man-made scar, but by the stones themselves, half-buried concrete and a corroded plaque. Authorized personnel. Project HOLLOWTONE. The vault door was welded shut, but the heat and sand of Nevada had not erased the hum. Inside the tunnel, instruments recorded a crescendo. Her EM meter spiked, and her most trusted accelerometer registered a pressure wave that made the air feel thick. Her recorder picked up what she would later call an answer. A low reply to the pulses she played back through a handheld speaker. The sound came back with subtle delays, with micromodulations that resembled pattern more than echo. When she plotted the waveform, the reply wasn't random. It contained repeated motifs, pauses like punctuation. It reacted to stimuli. If she increased frequency, the response shifted. If she stopped, the reply trailed into near silence, then resumed after a pause, as if waiting. Ellie was a scientist. She documented everything. She named the waveform Hollow Response 1. She sent packets of data back to the consortium. Replies were slow, bureaucratic. Instrument anomaly, they wrote. Possible ground coupling with military infrastructure. But bureaucracies have limits. Instruments don't. Over the next week, her equipment malfunctioned in ways that couldn't be blamed on age. A tripod anchor vanished from its mount. A geophone's case appeared to be crushed from the inside. A drone she launched to map the mesa's rim returned with footage of the ground, smooth and intact, except for a dark shimmer where nothing should be, like oil pooling on rock. On the sixth night, the frequency rose. Ellie recorded it all. The paper-thin tremors that preceded the rise, the way distant shrubs rattled on a time that had no weather to explain it, the low moan that made the hairs on her forearms stand upright. She played the recorded sequence back into the chamber to study the reply. The thing below returned the call. What came back wasn't merely sound, it was a behavior. When she modulated a tone in ascending intervals, the reply followed in descending. When she paused for 7 seconds, the reply held a single, sustained pitch that matched the pause like a held breath. Her instruments began to show harmonics, overtones that shouldn't exist in granite. At 2 in the morning, the chamber breathed. The walls moved inward, millimeters at first, then in an undulating slide. Dust fell in a pattern, describing arcs like someone exhaling. Ellie felt the pressure shift in her chest. Radios went dead. Compasses spun, sentimentless. Her laptop screen shimmered as the hum pushed against the refresh rate. She reached for the main breaker, and everything sang louder, as if waking. On tape, beneath the rumble, something else threaded through. A thin, high-frequency click, too faint to hear without amplification. And beneath that click, a whispering pattern. Amplified and slowed, it didn't sound like any human language, but it structured like language. It imitated more than melody. It mirrored. "Hello," she said into the recorder because the moment demanded a human act. "Can you hear me?" Silence answered. Then the wave returned, not a mimic, but a response shaped like the rise of understanding. The recorder registered a sequence that matched prime intervals. It was not random. It was not mechanical. That night, Ellie wrote her last clear log. Her handwriting sharpened into urgency. Not echo, not machine. It answers. It listens. We are not alone under the mesa. There is something aware of being listened to. Her primary array and personal recorder were found 2 weeks later, near the mouth of the vault. The consortium's salvage team reported delicate equipment failure and no human remains. Official statements called the incident a data loss due to electromagnetic interference. The welded door gave no sign of entry, but there was tape. Ellie had sent a backup file to a colleague before her final descent. The file surfaced on an independent forum months later, and curious listeners began to analyze the sound. Some heard nothing. Others, those who listened with headphones in quiet rooms, reported a faint undervoice laced into the rumble, like a syllable shaped from pressure. Listeners said it felt like a question. What the HOLLOWTONE team thought they'd weaponized, a frequency to deter, a sound to move rock and disorient troops, might have been something else entirely. An invitation, or a probe, or a call, wasted and misdirected. The desert had been listening. Something under the bedrock learned to speak back in the only way it could, by moving the world around it. We never got Ellie back. We never saw what, if anything, came up from under that mesa. We only have recordings and a plaque that time forgot. If you ever find yourself in the high stillness of the Nevada night and hear the faintest, steady thrum under your feet, listen closely. It's patient. It answers when you call. This story is a work of speculative fiction, inspired by government projects and the quiet mysteries of liminal places. If you enjoyed the Subsonic Vault, support Hauntica by subscribing for more What If horror. Share your theories below and tell us, if sound can learn to speak, What would you say back?